Hi everybody. So I thought I would do a quick video to try and recap the past week and talk about the events that have happened, which are quite incredible actually. But so let's start with Theresa May and the vote of no confidence that happened in Parliament at the beginning of the week. Now, this is something that I haven't heard speculated on, but I do wonder is whether Theresa May loyalists actually put in letters themselves to the 1922 committee to force this onto the agenda, to force the vote of no confidence to happen, and to flush out the ERG to make them prove whether they can actually achieve their goal, which is to remove Theresa May, and they've completely failed. So, if that is the case, then it's a bit of a masterstroke on her part. Now it's pure speculation. I don't know. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. But maybe I've been watching too much House of Cards. Anyway, so where does this leave us? Well, it kind of leaves us where we were before the vote of no confidence, except that the ERG are now even more impotent than they were before, which is a great thing from my perspective. So Theresa May's gone back to the EU to try and get some clarification regarding the backstop with the agreement, and she's obviously failed there, which was inevitable. Again, I'm beginning to wonder whether this is now becoming slightly stage managed, because the whole Brexit process on the British side is in such a mess that, and we're now reaching the end game. I am beginning to wonder whether we are now seeing attempts to try and get us out of this. So how could this happen? How could we get out of this? Now I think it's going to happen via a referendum. Anybody that's watched these videos before won't be surprised by that. And the way I think it could happen is that so Theresa May has two choices now. She either continues to push the deal and try and prevent Parliament from being able to vote on it or vote it down, but she's not going to be able to do that for very much longer, given the enormous majority that is against it. You know, from across the House, from all parties. So eventually she's going to have to put this to a vote. Now, when it gets voted down, which I believe it will do, I think at that point, now bearing in mind, if we go back to the vote of confidence, she can't be challenged now for another year. No. So let's assume that the deal is voted down, which I think it will be, and by a huge margin. I think what will then happen is that that we will have some kind of government of national unity, because I think Theresa May will have to reach across to other parties. She may call a general election. That's still a possibility, but I think what's more likely is that she's going to now try and create some kind of consensus across Parliament, which will be an enormous U-turn for her. But given that the amount of U-turns that she's already had to make, then what's another one? So now, if that happens, I then think, as part of the negotiations or part of this way of forming a government of national unity, I then think a referendum will have to be part of the deal. So whatever Parliament can come up with as a consensus, whatever kind of deal that it can get, I think that due to the arithmetic in Parliament, I think it's going to have to go back to the people in a referendum as well. And I think that will probably, it will have to include an option to remain. So let's take the argument. Let's take the arguments against a referendum. What people say. Firstly, let's look at the notion that it's undemocratic to have another referendum. lots of people use this argument. Lots of people say, well, people voted in 2016. It's up to Parliament now to implement the will of the people. Well, I've got one very, very simple answer to that. You cannot undermine the will of the people by gauging the will of the people. The only way that you can undermine the will of the people is by refusing to allow them to have a voice, which is what proponents people that are arguing against a referendum on the final deal are basically trying to do. They're trying to deny people the opportunity to have a say on it. So the argument that it's undemocratic to have that referendum, well, it's the complete opposite. It's obviously the complete opposite. And the reason, of course, people argue this point is because they're afraid that they will lose. If they were confident that there is a majority in the country for Brexit, whatever Brexit is, they wouldn't have a problem. But they know that the ground is shifting in this country, that it's already shifted in this country, and that's why they're afraid to allow the people to have a say in a referendum. But they claim that it's democracy, blah, 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 blah. But of course, it's the exact opposite. So I think this is what's going to happen. Now, if a general election is called, that's that's like throwing the cards up in the air. Who knows what could happen then? But I think as it stands, I think this is probably the most likely thing that's going to happen. Theresa May is going to try and form some kind of majority across the House in the new year after the deal's been voted down. I mean, she may never even put it to Parliament. She may never put the deal to Parliament. She may just forget about it. We are edging further away from crashing out, I think. I could be completely wrong, but this is the feeling that I get, and I think we're moving in the right direction, and the right direction is to consult the British people democratically in a referendum. So, as usual, if you agree with me, then please email your MPs, write to your MPs, make sure you include your postal address in there so that they know it's one of their constituents. Just keep putting the pressure on. Follow me on Twitter if you want to. It's at Chris Hoare, Hoar, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm spamming about Brexit all the time. So if you find these things interesting, look me up. Cheers. Take care, guys.